Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. I'm Emo Tempest and today we're doing episode 3 of Tales from the Emissaries. Now I know I kind of disappeared for a little bit last week, but I'm not gonna lie, we were getting ready for Reraise. This time I'm just gonna talk about my 3 decks choices, what I was going back and forth in between, what I finally landed with, and kind of pretty much just the overall weekend, right? We had a lot of stuff going on. I was pretty much testing every night for 3 nights, and everything felt good is the problem, right? So it was hard to make the decision. My top 3 contenders were Mono Water. I'm sure everyone's seen this list floating around. I hadn't made many changes to it, but I'll get into that in a second. The second was Emissaries. I still believe Fire has a relatively decent matchup in the world here, but I don't know. It's just Reraise was evolving every day, so it was hard for me to commit to this. Lastly was Mono Wind. Ultimately, I decided to stay with Mono Wind. I'm gonna talk about the reasons why and the deck choices and stuff. But yeah, so this is where we started, right? I was testing against Black Waltz, Reraise, Sam's, Mono Water, Mono Wind, Avalanche, and a few rogue things like dancers and pirates. I wouldn't say pirates is rogue, but I'm just saying a few other things so I would say I put in the reps, right? Mono Water was testing really well. It's definitely a good deck. I was skeptical at first, to be honest. I'm actually planning on making a separate video on this list, on this deck overall for everyone, just so people kind of understand what's going on with it and why it's so important and stuff like that. So yeah, the Mastery is the focus, the tightest. The only really major change I made from the original Japanese list was adding this Leviathan. I think as testing went on and as I started straying away from this, I hadn't made any more changes, but I would definitely like to increase the EX count and keep this card at 3. This card just lets me make sure my EX bursts are even more valuable. It lets me filter a little bit faster. It lets me control what my next cards are. I don't like having multiple light cards in my hand sometimes. I know Emissaries Ep.3 is good, but it's also can be cumbersome at times, and so this card is exceptional, and I'm really surprised I haven't seen it in anybody's list. This card just sets up the damage. I don't know, and it's really good. So yeah, the rest is pretty self-explanatory, right? You have your summons, you have your Leviathans, Sildras, Remoras, the other Leviathans, Blue Worms, Tross, Yuna, Hilda, and the Merlewood. I'm not sure how I feel about people adding Sarahs and princesses and all that stuff. I think you're really getting away from the list, but that's just me. Again, I'm planning on making a complete separate video about this whole deck in its entirety, as opposed to more of a profile / doctor / tech. You'll see. I hope you guys like it, but we'll talk about that on another one. The second choice was Emissaries, right? We love Amaterasu, right? The idea is always play this, and so that's why we were testing against Avalanche and stuff, because they're still one of the few lists that, aside from Reraise now, that can run both Mist Dragons and Amaterasus. But as always, this list just does a lot of damage. We love the new Luneth, we love the new Soul, and we love the new Squall. All of these cards are just really strong, and then this list has always been pretty consistent. The new Samurai is also a very nice extra way to damage people, as well as a way to bring Scion back and some of these guys, some of the really cool, even Squall back in certain situations, right? So very good. Also the Chucha spell being able to kind of get rid of Reraise innate protection is also very helpful. So that was the main strategy when testing with this, right? How this did. Overall though, it just didn't feel good for me. I've never been a fan of the mono fire stuff. It's not for me. That's all I can say about it, right? The final choice was and actually what I ended up going with was the Mono Wind. That Dutch Nationals list was super was crazy, right? When we saw it in action, it was very exciting. I think I grabbed that and I ran with it, as some would say. 2 Zana, 3 Edge, 1 and 1 Zidane. You'll see a few weird cards, and I'll get into that. But I have the Arc, the Triple Dancers, Double Fina, 1 Kadaj, Mid, Sin, Chocobo, the Fat Chocobo, which is the whole thing, right? Bart, Bismarck, Cecil, Typhon, Archer, Riku, Geomancer, White Mage, Conductor, Fiona, Chocolat, Ninja, Rem, Selkie, Althea, Chocobo Sam, and Tycoon. Alright, I'm going to go into this. I'm going to talk about this one in detail. Like, this is what this video is really about. This was the list. This was what we started with. This is where we this is where we ended, right? And after multiple changes and going up against all the lists that we talked about, right? At our locals, I went undefeated in 1, and I got second place, or second, top 4, right, in the other one. So it felt good. Like, we were doing good with this list against, within our locals. So Zana. Just simple, get the Fat Chocobo, right? 2 options to get him out. The Edge, I was running at 2. I found it became more important as I got adjusted to the other matchups. So the idea is pretty much drop Chocobo turn 1 and Edge if you can. It just made it easier to deal with all the other, with whatever answers your opponent would anticipate. And ultimately, the Cecil Edge thing is what protected the rest of the deck. So the 1 and 1 Zidane was what I believe my best decision, because it kept me in the realm of both being able to abuse this Zidane and still getting away with stealing stuff. There was never a situation where I drew one and I didn't play it or I wanted the other one, right? So they were always beneficial to have both. And so I kept the 1/1 so I'd have that option, right? The idea is too that Bismarck lifts one and I can play the other one if I need to, or just continue to play it, right? The Arc was a last minute choice. Like, I had 2 flex spots in my opinion, like as a deck. The flex spots were actually the Arc and the second Azana. Everything else I felt needed to stay. I guess the Kadaj was also a flex spot, but he was originally a Noctis for the first week and a half of testing. So the main thoughts here is that I felt several times that Wind would get overpowered, and which is one of the very common problems that Wind has, which is why we have so much value and so much other mechanics, right? So many more abusable mechanics, right? And so the Arc was just that extra power to get everyone in a safe spot, or to help people get across, right? So with the whole, if you guys aren't familiar with the engines, right? Like, the Fat Chocobo is the big thing. He filters, he kind of scries and gets you one, and then he's playing the backups for free, right? Essentially, this guy is negative XCP if you let him, the longer you let him live. So the main thing is that he comes out, he plays one of these Geomancer, the Rem, or and they kind of turn him back up or reactivates him. Then on your opponent's turn, you're able to play the Riku, the White Mage, the Cactuar, or another Geomancer or whatever, right? And so when you're able to abuse the Bismarck, Riku, Chocobo loop kind of thing, it's being able to activate things and then make them unblockable by 4 or higher, by 3 or higher. Then they'll swing in, then you can Chocobo activate stuff and then tap in for the people who haven't attacked, right? There's certain areas where this card came in handy. As far as the tournament went, he only came out twice, I think. I found myself pitching him the rest of the time. So this could probably be something better. The dancers were very important. Again, being able to reactivate things on one turn, meaning you only needed one of these on board. When you had the rest of the characters, if you control 7 or more Wind characters, you'd be able to cleave for 8. The cleaving was a way to get around targeting certain things, as well as just board control overall, right? With the amount of times we were able to activate things in this deck, even Soirees shouldn't have been a problem if I'm able to keep her alive, right? We'll just kill the Adele first and then cleave for 8. On a good turn, I can cleave 4 times in one turn, right? So it's kill the Adele first and then kill everyone else with the cleave. So And if I'm able to drop 2 comfortably on one turn, then the damage is pretty ridiculous. The Phenos are obviously just extra like protection. The Kadaj was also for mostly. I dropped the Noctis for the Kadaj because I wanted to be able to remove more effectively from my opponent's break zone. Mainly because the Avalanche I felt like could have been a weird game. And then same thing with Soirees, right? I needed to remove all those options from the break zone. And I think those were the main issues, and that's kind of why the Noctis took a side, like, took a hike pretty much, right? We took him out for this. The mids are just pretty self-explanatory, right? Like spot protection from certain abilities. Again, the main things we were thinking about are like Merald and Black Waltzes or whatever, right? Like, or even Cloud Avalanche, right? Like big things, big removals like that. The Sin was actually like a big lockdown thing, which was I'm sure all the other Wind players in the room thought of it and like were in there, but your opponent can use actions on their turn, so stuff like Rydia and the Twins would ideally not be useful on that turn. But with all the extra CP floating around towards mid and late game, dropping a Sin on Soirees is just unfortunate, right? Like you cancel the Adele, Meralds, and all of that stuff, and even the Totos, right? Like on a wide board. So Sin was very important. Bartz is a big body and also activates everything. Bismarck is still a freaking king. I think he's actually the most unfair card in the game right now, despite everything else. I'm pretty sure he might get limited, if anything, because I don't think they can straight up ban him, because he will be, I think it'll kill Wind at 100%. So I think he might be the next limited card. Cecil, I told you, like I said, it goes with the innate protection with like edge. You want to like abuse that tacting, and that's the effect that kind of helps like split the CP gap between you and your opponent, right? Double Typhon, because again, being able to recur him with Bismarck. The one Archer for whatever the Minwus out there, the Shinjus. I had to break one of the Antiquities. I can't remember those stupid with X Death. Anyway, I was able to break one of these, but the one of just for like those weird rogue backup hating things, like something that I felt would be necessary. And sure enough, it was. Like during testing, early to mid game, getting rid of a Shinju it seems very, very, very helpful. So they rely more on the Edel and stuff like that, and other ways of bringing in their mannequins was what I was looking for. The Rikus is the big thing, but playing 3 felt clunky. Geomancers and the White Mage was the other way to like really target people. If you guys didn't see the plays, the idea is to play White Mage off Fat Chocobo on your opponent's turn, so when they target something in their break zone, you remove it and cancel it, like stuff like Barret or Edel or anything like that. The Cactuar was the same thing. On either player's turn, when you're blocking or attacking, if they something happens, you can cheat the Cactuar Conductor and the next damage becomes 0. Fiona wasn't in the list originally, but the fact that I needed to search all of this stuff sometimes is a no-brainer, really. Again, there's a lot of floating CP, so being able to like get ready the Typhon or the Bismarck on the next turn, or whatever, the Bartz for the big plays, or the Zidane, or or the mid Sin, any of them really, just helps us get there. The Chocolat, just because she's a Chocobo, honestly, I didn't really abuse the counter mechanic too much. Like, she just ends up being another searcher for Sam and Izana when you have Fat Chocobos and you need more backups for the Fat Chocobo to play. The Ninja was, shout out to my boy Brandon when he used for the testing, but I really like this card. It's better than the old Oracle, I think it is, because you're able to activate stuff one thing at a time if I need to, or just like activate all my Wind characters. And so just a one-up to break and go wide, like, to bring everything back up. The Rem's also just a one-up because it has that same ability. Like, sometimes you use it, you hold onto this one for the Dancer plays mainly, or it's pretty much just the Dancer plays. You kind of leave it there, and then when you have a Dancer out, you can tap, break the Rem, activate, tap again, Then Chocobo will do his thing, play in, Geomancer Riku, spin everything back up, go again 4K, and then Bart's ideally in that same hand, and you activate everything again in another 4K. The Selkie was just another way to trigger Bismarck when needed, as well as like a weird 5 damage out later. Althea was out originally, but still too good of a card. I need to spot save stuff too sometimes. After they pay the taxes, you can still save it, and so like Althea is really good. I felt like 3 Chocobo Sam was too many, so I left this at 2 and then 2 Izanas. And then the 1 King Tycoon, I had it at 2 originally, but then I dropped it for the Althea, and so that's where we are. At the end of the day, we went 4-3. By the 5th, going into the 6th round, we were X1. I lost to Avalanche. We had the Kadaj doing his thing, but my opponent had it all in his hand. Right, he held until he had Baron on the field, I believe. Then he has 3 backups, and he drops Jesse Wedge Biggs, pitches the last card for Noctis, and then parties, triggers the abilities to search, and then parties again to play the Cloud, and then deal 10k and give haste. It was just such a brutal turn, right? I ended up losing Chocobo Sam, Fat Chocobo, and Bismarck all in 1 turn. So yeah, it was super rough, and I lost it. And then game 7, we played the only guy in the room I didn't want to play because I know this deck auto loses to the Twins. And sure enough, my round 7 is against Palamporum. And yeah, and he opens Palamporum, so there's really no way for me to recover out of that. I opened the Typhon, but it still wasn't enough. He had it over and over again, and it is what it is. I'm actually really surprised that none of the other wins made it into top, really. I still think this is a really good deck, very good for the meta. It does well against Soiree. It doesn't just auto lose, which is what we wanted, right? We wanted the 50-50 at the very least. And it does really well against a lot of the other decks in the meta. It probably does really bad against super aggro. I don't know if I would have beat the first place guy at the way he was playing, but we'll have to figure that one out later. But yeah, guys, that's gonna do it for this one. Again, we ended up 4-3. Overall, a good weekend. The deck is good. I'm sure I can make some changes here and there, but if Wind ever gets anything that has removal, faster removal, then this deck is gonna excel a lot more. Again, I still think Bismarck is the biggest absurd card in this list, in this color, and he will probably get some hate, I think, in the near future. So just my thoughts. If you disagree or anything, make sure to leave it in the comment, guys. I'll have all 3 of these decks in the description in case you want to see them, as always. But yeah, thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Hope you guys had fun at Reraise. Hope you guys tuned into the VODs. Make sure to check out the Haven Games. Did a wonderful job for hosting and giving out all this great promos and stuff, and just overall great hosting for the event. We loved it. As far as events go, I don't think we'll be at any of them till PA or maybe Canada. That's pending still. We'll see how the next few months play out. So, but yeah, guys, thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week when we decide to build something else that's not going into big tournaments. So we'll see where my brain goes for that one. Catch you later, guys.